Welcome to The Clever Angle, the podcast where you get job shadowing experience without the job shadowing. I'm your host, Tevin McGee, and each week I'll bring you a different career field and give you a roadmap of how to get there. So without further ado, let's jump into the show. All right, welcome to another episode of the Clever Angle podcast. I'm your host, Tevin McGee, and today I catch up with firefighter Judd Alsup, who breaks down what skills and qualifications you need to pursue a career in his field. Judd, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. How you making it through this quarantine?
My sanity is starting to wear thin, but we're good, dude. We recently had a baby. I know you know that, but listeners don't. So we're trying to navigate having a child through this craziness, and we're first-time parents, and so we're figuring it out one day at a time. And I think my wife's probably going more insane than I am just because she's having to deal with me. But it's good, dude. We're every time we go to the store, it's funny. We went to Sam's today and got our groceries, and we're not hoarders, so we didn't get more than we need, so no one freak out.
But you didn't fill up your whole cart with toilet paper.
No. Well, we couldn't. There wasn't any there to fill it up with. But even if there was, we wouldn't have. But we actually got Lysol wipes when we got home. We wiped all of our groceries down, and man, we're just trying to kind of be intelligent about what we do, not trying to overthink it and get paranoid, but also trying to be smart and take care of our little baby and each other. So, but we're doing well, man. Thanks for asking.
But I'm going to take a page out of your book, and we'll get into this at the end. But tell me about your origin story.
Oh, sweet. Okay. So, and I'm sure like you said, we'll talk about this at the end, but I used to do a podcast, and that was like one of my main questions would be, what is your origin story? And what I meant by that, and maybe Tevin means by that as well, is like, what was your start? Like, how did you get your start in what you do? And like you said at the beginning, I'm a firefighter, and so that job, I chose it for a specific reason, because, well, there's multiple reasons. See, as we talk through this, you'll learn my personality is extremely scatterbrained, so sometimes I have to like jump around until I find what I'm looking for. But I became a firefighter for a few reasons. One, I'm extremely adventurous, and I needed something to satisfy that part of my personality. I also love being physically active. As much as I hate to admit it and say it in these words, I am an avid CrossFitter. I'm not gonna go down that road and act like it's a cult, because I'm not like that. But I do love that type of fitness, and it's a very functional style of fitness where, you know, you're picking things up and you're putting them over your head and you're moving your body, and it's not just like doing bicep curls, you know? So I wanted a job that allowed me to use that fitness, and so I needed to satisfy not only the adventure, but also, you know, the physically active side of things. And then the other big key thing was I love helping people. Maybe that's that Captain America coming out of me. I don't know, but I love just the concept of tangibly, actively, physically helping somebody. And so the thought of getting to go into a burning building, use my fitness, and potentially one day pull somebody out of that and save their life was extremely appealing to me. And there's a long road that led me to that epiphany, that 3-part epiphany. And we can go down that bunny trail if you want to, but essentially those are the 3 things that I wanted. And so out of life. And so I went for it. The other thing, like I said, I'm scatterbrained. The other thing side of this story is I consider myself extremely creative, and I love to songwrite, and I dabble in graphic design here and there, and other creative things. And so I also wanted to be able to pursue that part of my life, and firefighting allows you to have multiple occupations because of the hours. I'm 24 hours on, but I have 48 hours off. Some people do it differently. Some places do it differently. They'll do like 2 days on, 4 days off. So 48 on, and then whatever, that's too much math, however many hours that is. 90 something hours. I don't know.
Yeah.
They'll do 96 maybe. They'll do that off. But here in Jonesboro, where I live, we're 24 hours on and 48 off. So I have 2 days essentially to completely switch gears and pursue whatever the heck I want. There's some guys who do construction. There's some guys like handyman style work. There's some guys who build fences. There's some guys who own lawn care services, and some guys that do real estate, some guys that do photography, you name it, it's out there. With firefighters, because we have those 2 days. Some guys who don't have families and don't need an extra job or don't want an extra job, just chill, go hunting, go fishing, do whatever they love and just call it a day and pull in the fire salary. But I'm not like that. I got to keep myself occupied. So anyway, those are the main reasons to because I'm adventurous, want to be physically active and help people. And then also the schedule really appealed to me. And so anyway, if we really want to dig into the origin, it took me a while to figure that out about myself. Tevin, you know this. I was a waiter. I served.
Shout out Outback Steakhouse.
Yeah, that's right. Outback. I served and waited tables for, gosh, four years, I think, because I waited tables at Outback for 6 months to a year. But then I moved to another state, another city, Nashville, Tennessee, and I actually waited tables there for another 3-ish years.
So what? Okay. So yeah, you said you worked at Outback from 6 months to a year, and then you moved to Nashville. What was the reason for moving to Nashville?
So my wife went to school at Belmont University, and at the time we were engaged. So when I graduated at Arkansas State, she had a year left at Belmont, and so I moved. We got married, and I moved to be with her. And so honestly, I was just kind of in limbo. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life at that point. Going back to the degree, I just got a degree. I graduated. Now I have this piece of paper in hand, and no one would hire me for what I was majored in. I got the same story over and over again, which was you don't have enough experience. You don't have enough experience. And it was a catch-22 because I was like, how am I supposed to get experience if no one hires me? And, I think some of it was kind of my fault. I think I should have, if that's the field I wanted to be in, which I didn't know at the time, so maybe it's not my fault. I should have tried to intern some places maybe during college that connected with that degree. But I didn't do that. I worked at other places instead. And so when I got out, I really didn't have any tangible experience that fit my degree. So none of the big places in Nashville wanted to hire me because it was so saturated with marketing professionals already, because that's kind of a hub for all things creative, that it would have cost them. I would have just cost them money, essentially. One guy actually told me that. It's funny. I was kind of desperate because we were living off of my savings. Claire was a full-time student, and I didn't have a job. That's how smart I am. I got married and moved without a job lined up. Which now to me, as 5 years later or whatever, looking back, is just terrifying. But at the time I was like, we're getting married, let's do this thing. And so I seriously moved over there with no job lined up. And I looked up all the biggest marketing firms in Nashville, and I somehow, some sketchy way, I'm sure, found like the CEO's email address, and I emailed him, like legit, from whatever stupid email address I had at the time, probably Judd72, whatever at Hotmail, was like, hey, you don't know me, but I need a job, and give me one. I don't know what I said in the email, but I'm sure it was more spiced up than that. But anyway, he actually emailed me back and agreed to meet with me, which really kind of threw me for a loop. And so I remember I woke up and got in my really crappy car that I'd had since I was 16 and walked out of our apartment, kissed my wife bye, walked out of our apartment, and then Google Map, because I had no idea where I was at in the city, Google Map my way to this place and walked in. Really cool environment, met the dude, sat down with him, and was just honest with him. He basically just said, hey, he said the only reason I agreed to meet with you is because someone who has enough guts to just straight up email a CEO is someone that I want to meet. And I was like, well,
Wow, that's
you know,
awesome.
I guess I appreciate that. That's cool. I didn't really, it wasn't gutsy at the time to me. It was just more desperate than anything, but I played it off. You know, I was like, yeah, that's me. I'm gutsy. And he was honest with me. He said, look, I've looked at your resume, which was like maybe half a page, and not in a good way, like not because it was concise, because there was nothing to put on it. And I even BS some stuff on that. It wasn't like I didn't lie, but I didn't really fully tell the truth, kind of thing. Like, oh yeah, I've got these skills. Like, I'm sure I could do that. I'm sure I could work Adobe Illustrator if I had to. And he said, "Man, be honest with you, you seem like a good guy, but you're just going to cost me money. I'm going to have to train you. You're not going to be an asset to my team for a long time, and so you're not really useful to me." He said, "However, because I like you, I'm going to offer you an internship where you can work for me for free. And here in a few months, if you show promise, we'll try to bring you on." Well, that sounds like a great idea in theory, but I have a wife at home to support, she's a full-time student at Belmont, and it's kicking her butt. So she doesn't have time. And not like she was doing good in school. It just took it was hard. It was a hard program. And it wasn't really fair of me to ask her to go work while I went to this job that didn't pay anything. And so I left that meeting really disappointed, because I knew, I was real nice to him. I shook his hand. I was like, "Oh, I appreciate that. Let me talk to my wife, and I'll get back with you, within the next day." But in my heart, I was like, that's not going to work. So I left really sad, went home, and I let the guy know that I couldn't take it. And the other part of this story too was my savings was starting to run out. Um, I was getting to the end of, so what's your option? As a newly married dude who who doesn't have a job and is looking for one and can't get one in his career field, and you're running out of money. What do you do? Do you run out of money? What happens then? Do you call your parents? Do you like go to the McDonald's down the road, which is an option? And I don't have anything against people that work at McDonald's. If that's, I gained a huge respect for the hospitality industry as a server, and this is coming down the road. But and before I knew it, I was standing there with one more rent payment in the bank account and no job. And it was like, well, God, what? Because for those of you that don't know, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and so in that sense, I was praying, asking God, like, what's going on here? I felt like I made the right decision with this degree, even though it was kind of random at the time. I made the most educated decision I could because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and now I'm here, and where what am I supposed to do now? And so, even though I swore I'd never wait tables again, I had a connection, really random one, to a restaurant in Franklin, Tennessee, which I did like the most. I'm not going to call it pathetic, but just like Hail Mary thing I could, and I literally just walked into the restaurant, drove there one day, walked into the restaurant and said, "Hey, I know blank, insert the guy's name here, and he said I should come talk to you guys about a job." Not knowing if like it was a good connection, or if like he'd gotten in a fight with this guy at one time. I just knew that they knew each other. And he was like, "Oh yeah, so and so." And I was like, "Oh, sweet, it paid off. They have a good relationship." And anyway, I sat down for an interview that afternoon, and they said, "Well, we're not hiring right now, but if we do, just we'll keep your resume on file and give you a call." So I honestly just kind of thought it was another dead end. And so I went home and told my wife the story, and basically the same thing to her, that probably another dead end. And time went on. About a week later, rent was due. And so with what I had left in savings, and this is like probably 4 months after we got married. Nashville's really expensive, in case you didn't know. So you can blow through your savings really fast. I made the last rent payment that I could before I was going to go into the red the next time it rolled around. And funny enough, that afternoon, after I made that rent payment, I was sitting in my car and I got a phone call from a Tennessee number. And so I answered it, and it was Puckett's Grocery and Restaurant offering me a job as a server. And so with very little money in the bank, and kind of a bitter heart a little bit, a grateful heart because I had a job, but somewhat bitter because it was serving. I thought I was supposed to be wearing a suit going to work. I put on some blue jeans and a Comfort Colors t-shirt that said Puckett's Grocery and my apron, and went back to doing what I knew how to do and was honestly pretty good at. We ended up making some really good money waiting tables there. It's in a touristy spot. So for those of the people out there who can speak waiter terms, we'd have a 2-hour wait out the door, and it wasn't uncommon for me to have 6 tables at one time, turning them every 45 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, getting them in and out.
Yeah, you're making bank doing that.
Yeah, bro. And we're talking every night of the week, they'd have live music with a cover charge. People come in, bring their families, and rack up a humongous bill. So after like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, they stopped accepting walk-ins and started reserving those tables for the people that were going to pay the cover charge. And so you could literally just sit there and wait on these people, listen to music. And by the end of the night, they've got a $400 bill for a family of 4 or whatever. And, you're making, if they tip and you did a good job, and sometimes those two things don't line up. Sometimes you do a phenomenal job and they don't tip. Sometimes you don't do such a great job and they still tip. And sometimes the stars align and you do great and they tip you really well. Then you can make some really good money. So I was able to support myself and my wife, as well as save a little bit of money waiting tables in Nashville. And so a lot of people that I worked with were older, were 30s, 40s, even 50s and 60s. I know I just walked up in decades, but it's true. We're working at this restaurant, this really small restaurant, waiting tables, bartending, and hosting, because they couldn't make better money anywhere else. So by the grace of God, I landed in this little Bermuda Triangle of restaurants in this little town where people just flocked to and ate really well and paid really good money to their servers. And so we were able to survive. I did that for about 3.5 years.
Wow. I didn't realize you were there that long.
Yeah. So Clara had to finish up, and we stayed a little bit longer too. And there's some to that story as well, why we stayed, because I didn't know what I wanted to do was why. And there wasn't any reason in moving yet, because we didn't know what we were moving for. So, kind of put me back into that story. I was waiting those tables, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Tev, but if you're in a job that you don't like.
Stop right there. I've already experienced it.
Yeah. Okay. So, if you're in a job that you just have a disdain for 6 months or so, you're good. Okay, whatever. It's unfortunate. I'm here. We're good. Then you get into like the 6 months to a year phase where it's like, okay, this is getting old. And then you move out of that into the year to year and a half phase where it's like, okay, all right, like this is starting to wear on me. And honestly, from that point on, I said 3.5 years. That probably wasn't accurate. It was more like 2.5 years. So let me rewind on that. It was 2.5 years. At that point, you get to a place where it's kind of dark. Like it starts to affect
your mental health,
your family. Yeah, it affects you on a personal level and on a spiritual level and on a physical level. It affects your family because it's affecting you. And when you go home, you don't have anything to give them because you just put it all into being fake. Because in that field, you have to be in the server field, the food industry, you have to be kind. Like you have to be loving and caring and concerned about each table that you visit. Otherwise, you don't make money. And so I was going to work and putting on this mask of, hey, I love to be here. But also because I didn't want to get fired, but because I also had to make money. And then I would go home and I would take off that mask and there was nothing left. And so we realized we needed to do something. It was to the point where I would go to the bathroom at work, not to use the restroom, but to get on my phone and look for jobs. And like I would hear my name being called out, like, Judd, you just got sat again, while I'm on the phone looking for a different job, thinking there's no way out of this. Like, and it was the weirdest situation because I couldn't quit because I needed the money and I couldn't make more money anywhere else. But everything inside of me just wanted to walk out of the restaurant, throw up deuces and keep walking, but I couldn't do that, So you have to make money, but you don't want to be there. And it was just a really dark place
Yeah.
for a long time. The winning thing and the one like light at the end of the tunnel was I absolutely adored the people that I worked with. And we were all kind of in the same boat. Like no one really wanted to be there. There was like one person or two who were like career servers who really enjoyed it. And you know what? Kudos to them. That it's just like anything else. Like I wouldn't want to be an accountant because I hate accounting, but there's some people who like just totally dig that. Kudos to them too. Um, but for the majority of us, we were there as servers because we couldn't get jobs elsewhere, because we needed the money, and because we had, most people had something else they wanted to be doing. But like in my case, I wanted to be doing marketing, but I couldn't get into that field, so I had to make money anyway. Loved the people that I worked with, and every day we'd come into work, you could just kind of make eye contact, and it was almost just like somebody that understood. Like it was just this weird like we get it, you
Yeah.
get it, like let's go to work and let's finish this day together. And to this day, that we're 5 years, almost 4 years, 5 years, 4 years removed. I've worked at the fire department longer than I worked at Puckett's. 4 years removed from that job, and I still talk to those servers all the time, that I worked with. Some of them, bless their heart, are still there. Some of them are not. And before somebody from Puckett's hears this, Puckett's is a phenomenal place to work. Like, it's really good money. It's a great atmosphere. The owners and the managers care about you as a person. It had nothing to. It wasn't them. It was me, right? And it had nothing to
Yeah.
do with them and everything to do with me. And so I wanted to make that preface. But those friends I still have, and it's almost like we have this trauma bond because we were in the
100%.
trenches
Those are
together.
the
So
the only people that understand. Like, it's just a very unique bond that people in a restaurant go through because they're the only people that understand what it's like to wait on people, to work on the weekends, to work on holidays, that have the same kind of schedule as you. And I think there is a lot of value in having worked at a restaurant. So
oh heck yeah, man! You gain
so
skills
much.
like social skills, respect for all kinds of jobs. You learn how terrible people can be, and you learn how generous people can be. Um, you learn all kinds of things. I think I will encourage my daughter, not anytime soon, but I will encourage her to serve at some point before she decides what she wants to do with her life, because it was such a turning point for me as an individual. Which we've been on the phone for almost 40 minutes at this point, 30 minutes, I guess, and we haven't even gotten to the fire part yet. So I'll speed this up. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah. So just take me
did
what it was like to the last day at Puckett's.
yeah, okay. So bittersweet, man, which is really hard, weird. It's weird to say, because I wanted so long to get out of there, and so much to get out of there and move on to greater, better things, whatever that was. But I also didn't want to leave my people, because they are my people. They still are to this day. And I tip really well. So if I'm ever at your table, even if you do a really, really crappy job, probably just out of sympathy, I'm going to tip you because I don't know what you've been through that day.
Exactly.
So
Isn't
there's
it
that.
weird like
But
that?
so the last day at Puckett's, man, before I can tell you that, I really have to, because there was a transitionary time there. It was really dark at Puckett's. Didn't like it. And so my wife and I decided we had to do something about it. So I actually went and took a professional at an institute aptitude test, because I had no clue what I wanted to do. I was so scatterbrained. I was like, should I go into the military? Should I go try to do marketing again? Should I jump off a cliff and go do graphic design? Should I go into the fitness industry? Because I was really involved in that. And that's something I didn't even mention. My wife and I weren't seeing each other during the day because in order to make ends meet, I was working at a gym in the mornings from 8 until 1, immediately going home, jumping in the shower, getting out and getting to work by 3 or 4. And the way her school schedule worked, we would literally see each other on the road as I was headed to work and she was headed home. And then I'd get home and she was asleep. And then I'd wake up and go to the gym before she got up. And so unless I was off work, we didn't see each other. And I worked pretty much 7 days a week, as a general rule. So all that to say, we had to do something different. We were burnt out. I was burnt out. We were tired. We were mad at each other, not because we didn't like each other, but because we were so stressed. So I went and took this aptitude test. I can't remember the name of the Johnson O'Connor. That's what it was. Johnson O'Connor aptitude test in Atlanta. Drove down there, and they basically told me,
Wait, you took this in person?
yeah, like it's a legit institute. Like
Oh
it's a
wow.
2-day test. It's not an online thing. Like you drive down there, they put you through 2 full days of like weird little games and like computer things and hands-on things. And then by the end, they compile this like book of data on you and then tell you what kind of jobs, career fields like that you would love, which is really cool, especially for someone who doesn't know what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
So going into this thing, I was like, there's a few things that I kind of had an inkling that I might want to do. And when I got done with the tests, they told me all the things that I already knew about myself. And I was like, well, this was a waste of time. Like, I came down here for you to tell me what I'm going to do with my life because I can't decide. And I can't decide because I always feel like the grass is going to be greener the other way that I go. And the lady said, look, we told you everything you already know, and you may think that's useless, but it's not, because what we've given you is the freedom to choose any one of those things and know that you're going to love your life. And at that point, I was like, whoa. So you're telling me that no matter what way I go, as long as I have an aptitude in that area, that I'm going to like what I do. And she was like, yes, because you're going to be really, really good at it. And people like to do things that they're good at. And I was like, well, that's the most simple thing anyone's ever said, but that makes so much sense to me. And so I met with my wife and I was like, hey, firefighting was one of the top things on the list. And I was like, why don't we just go down this road and see what happens? I shadowed some people in some other fields. Nothing really jumped out to me. Did some things in the medical field that didn't really get my goat. Looked into law, even took the LSAT, and I was like, nah, this isn't what I want to do. And finally got a hold of the fireman, and he said, I messaged him on Facebook, the only fireman I knew, messaged him on Facebook and said, hey, what's the hiring process look like? And he lived in Jonesboro. I was in Nashville at the time. He lived in Jonesboro. He said, well, it's really simple, but you have to get your packet in today or it closes for another year. And I was like, whoa. So I faxed everything to him from a Kinko's because that was the only place I could get a fax machine, paid out the butt to fax that packet to him. And
yeah, so what was in the packet? Like, what did you have to send him?
Well, so the packet was just like anything, like whenever you apply to a job, you got to fill out the whole, my name, my social, what previous jobs I've had. These are my references, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then just send that in so that you could get the booklet to study for the test. And there's a whole other testing process. But at the time, honestly, I didn't even know if I was going to test. I just knew that if I wanted to that year, I had to get that packet into him. So I sent it to him, and he got it all processed and everything and signed me up to be eligible to take the test. So we decided that we didn't have any other options. So we were just going to start going down that road, completely blind, but I had to get out of Puckett's or I was going to lose my mind. So
at this point, were you planning to move back to Jonesboro?
Well, to be honest, I didn't really want to. We loved Nashville. We loved the Franklin area. We loved all that. But we looked into the fire department there, but there was a catch. They didn't want to hire you. It was the same thing. They didn't want to hire you unless you had experience, unless you already had your EMT license, unless you already had firefighter 1 and 2, which are courses, and then a bunch of other things. And I didn't have any of those, and they were going to take months to get, and they were going to cost thousands of dollars, and I already had a college degree, and so it didn't make sense to do that. But Jonesboro, you don't have to have anything to get hired, because once you hire in, they send you to school. So that was kind of like the cool little caveat there, where I could get started in this career field right out of the gate. Like, I didn't have to go do a bunch of prep work. I didn't have to go get another college degree. I didn't have to go to a bunch of school. Like, I could get hired, get paid salary, and get sent to school and be hired already. So that was why we started pursuing that, not because we wanted to move to Jonesboro, but because Jonesboro offered a start. And that was a light, man. Like, we were in this dark tunnel, and seeing the possibility that I could get hired somewhere and start doing something that fits me was huge.
So let's say you got all your stuff from the Jonesboro in Arkansas. Would that transfer to Nashville? Like, could you do it in other states?
Yes. And that was honestly kind of the original plan, was to get started in Jonesboro and then use it kind of as a launching pad, which doesn't sound like, it kind of sounds like you're using your employer, but that was the only way I could get started. Like, unless I went and got all of the class I wanted to. And so we were, because we love Nashville so much, we were trying to figure out how to stay there. And disclaimer to everyone, I still live in Jonesboro. I've been at the JFD for 4 years, so those plans kind of shifted. But yeah, so the thing is there, I can't remember the name of it. I think it's IFSTA certified. IFSTA certified. So they get this, all your certificates get this gold seal. You pay like $5 extra after you pass the class, and they get certified, and it's international. Anyway, but yeah, they're good. They're good any state, any internationally. So that was a huge selling point for us. Was if we get this, then we can go wherever. And here was the huge kicker, man. And I think I might have kind of mentioned this. Is they paid, once you get hired in Jonesboro, and there's a whole hiring process which we can touch on here in a second. Once you get hired, they pay you salary immediately. Once you're hired, they send you to school for 3.5 months, and they pay for it, which means you get EMT, Fire 1 and 2, driver operator, wildland ops and awareness, hazmat ops and awareness, some other things sprinkled in there. You come out with all of your basic certifications to get started, but they pay for all of it. They pay for your gas down there and back. They pay for your lodging, and they pay for all your food while you're there. You just bring back receipts and get reimbursed. So literally, you get paid salary to live a completely paid life for a little while. So it was like this no-brainer decision. If I can get hired there, we're going to go, because it's going to be a way for us to get ahead and get started in this thing. So anyway, yeah. So do you want to jump into the actual hiring process?
Yeah. Let's jump into the hiring process, and I want to hear about the academy too, because I mean, cool. I've never really wanted to be a firefighter, but you were making it sound very appealing. So I want to keep hearing about
awesome.
that.
Okay, so coming out of that dark place, going to that research facility, finding out I'm not super crazy, and that it's okay for me to be scatterbrained. I just need to commit to something. And funny enough, I committed to something that allows me to continue scatterbrained and do things on my 48 off. So it worked. We committed to the fire thing. So here's how the hiring process works in Jonesboro. It's a civil service job, which means that there's a testing process, an actual written test. After you put in that application, they give you a book, a little pamphlet to study, and you have a written test that comes straight out of that pamphlet. It's all fire-based. Like melting points of things and the fire tetrahedron and things like that. You learn all about that in the booklet, and then you come and you take this in-person written test. Depending on how you do on that written exam decides where you're placed on a list. So if I make a 100, I'm going to be number 1 on that list. If I fail the test, then I'm not going to be on the list. If you barely pass, you're at the bottom of the list, and so on and so forth. So if you have 30 guys in the room, you're going to get ranks between 1 and 30. If you match on score, you'll get the same rank. So I was tied for 5th place with 3 people, if that makes sense, after the written test. Immediately following the written exam, the next weekend, you take a physical test. Now, mind you, I'm still living in Nashville because I don't have a job. So I'm driving back to Jonesboro. It's about a 4.5, 5-hour drive to drive back. The physical test, and I'm still working at Puckett's, so the physical test is at 8 a.m. on a Friday morning, I think is what it was. Well, I had to work Thursday night. So I worked my shift went home, went to bed for about 2 hours, got up at 3 a.m., and drove to Jonesboro to take this physical agility test. I left myself about a 1 hour, 1.5 hour buffer period for the drive because I was like, there's no way I'm going to get stuck in traffic at 3 in the morning. But just in case I do, I'm going to leave myself some time. Lo and behold, I get about an hour outside of Memphis, Tennessee, and there's a wreck and a traffic jam. I wait in traffic for an hour, and we get going. So at this point, I have no buffer. I pull up to the physical agility test at the Jonesboro Fire Academy branch, which is south town in Jonesboro. There's a street that says Fire Academy Road, and it's on that road. And there's a big burn building, and they do their whole physical agility test there. I showed up at 8:10. I'm late to the physical agility test. Fortunately for me, they do a whole introduction where they walk you through all the things you have to do. So the way that the test works is there's like 10 stations, and you have to complete all of these 10 stations in under 10 minutes. So it's just pass fail. You don't get ranked on how fast you do it, but if you go over 10 minutes, you fail and you don't move on in the hiring process. They strap a 60-pound weighted vest on you to simulate having all your gear on, which is actually lighter than all of our gear. When you put all your gear and tools in hand, we carry about an extra 80 pounds with us when we go into a fire. So you've got this 60-pound vest on, and the first thing you do is you unroll a fire hose, a 50-foot section of hose. Then you immediately turn around and you roll that hose back up. So what that does is, and you can't just like bowl the fire hose, like you can't just throw it. You have to bend over and you have to roll and unroll it in a bent over position. What that does out of the gate is it compresses your lungs because you're bent over, and with that 60-pound vest on, it spikes your heart rate. So out of the gate, you're breathing heavy. Really simple task, but trust me, once you get done with it, you're kind of like, okay, this isn't going to be good. Following that, you grab a 100-foot section of 2.5 hose.
So you have to give all 10. You have to do all 10 of these in 10 minutes.
Yes, you have 10 minutes to complete all 10 tasks. Not 10 minutes for every task, 10 minutes for all of them combined. Yeah. So you roll and unroll the hose, then you pick up a 100 foot of 2.5, and you run it 100 feet. You screw a nozzle onto that, which is just the thing the water comes out on. Like you got your water hose at home, you screw the nozzle on, you got water. You screw a nozzle on, and then you carry it another 50 feet. You drop it, you move on to the next station. The next station is a ladder. You pull the ladder off of the side of the fire truck. You put the ladder on the side of a building, get an appropriate climbing angle. You climb up the ladder, tap the top rung, and then you climb down, put the ladder back up in a controlled manner. Okay, then you move on. At this point, you're breathing good. You move on to an axe station where you pick up an actual fire axe, and you chop a block of wood 56 times. So you've got
what?
You split it evenly between both sides, but you smoke a block of wood with an axe 56 times. And after that, okay, up to this point, pretty manageable. After swinging an axe 56 times, you're really starting to feel it. And this is where the burn tower comes into play. So now you've got this 4-story burn tower that you're looking at. Put the axe down. You pick up a high-rise pack, which is essentially some small diameter hose put together in a manner where you can throw it over your shoulder and carry it into a structure. So like if you've got a tall building, you can take this to the actual standpipe in the building and hook in on that floor and just go on that floor. Right? You wouldn't want to take hose all the way from the bottom connected to the fire truck and run it up a bunch of stairs. So instead, they have this pipe that runs all the way up the building, and you can just take a little bit of hose and go to that floor and hook in there and get water, is essentially what it is. Anyway, you take this pack of hose, which is 100 foot of fire hose, and you carry it up 3 flights of stairs. All right? You get to the top of these stairs, you drop that high-rise pack, you have to hoist a weight that's attached to a rope hanging over the edge of the balcony. You have to hoist that object up to you, touch it, and then hoist it back down. All right. And it has to be controlled. You can't just let the rope slide through your hands and hit the ground. If it does that, you get disqualified. So you have to, so that gets your grip going pretty good. And at this point, let me tell you, you are really, if you're going, you're really starting to breathe. Your legs are burning because you just ran up this high rise, 3 stories. Your lungs are going, your heart's racing. You're getting nervous because you got a bunch of firemen standing around you, yelling at you, telling you, is asking you if you want to quit, that kind of stuff. Which for some people, for people like me, it just kind of fires me up and makes me want to do it more. But at that point, you've hoisted, you've let that thing back down, it's touched the ground. You pick your high-rise pack back up, and you go up another flight of stairs. You tap the top rail, and then you come all the way down all 4 flights. Once you get to the bottom, you put your high-rise pack on the ground. You run over to a 180-pound dummy. You pick this thing up and carry it 100 foot, and that's when your time stops.
So
that's the physical agility test. So there's a lot of things in there.
What I'm saying is it probably took you 10 minutes to explain that.
I know, right? Okay, so it's exactly where I'm headed with this. I missed the whole explanation because I was 10 minutes late, Tevin.
Wow.
So I pull up to this thing and have no clue what I'm doing. They literally, this is not a joke, dude. I walked up out of my car after a 4.5, 5 hour drive, and they said, Alsup. And I was like, that's me. And they said, all right, you're first because your last name starts with an A. Let's go. And I was like,
Judd, you went first.
What are we doing?
Wow.
So they didn't explain it to me either. Like I would walk up to a station, point at it and say, you want me to do blank with this? And they would shake their head yes. And I would do that with it, hoping I was doing the right thing. I'm not kidding with you right now. I had no clue what I was doing in this test. But I passed by the grace of God. I finished everything in right around like 7.5 minutes or so.
Wow.
And called it a day. At the end, I was laying on the ground, breathing heavy, trying to get that stupid vest off, just thanking God that I made it to that test on time. And anyway, out of the people that tested, I ended up staying on the list because I passed, and it narrowed the list down because some people didn't pass the physical test. And after that, man, they start at the top of the list. So if there's an opening at the fire department, they interview the first 3 people on the list. So naturally, I was number 5, tied with 2 other people for number 5. So I didn't get an interview when they hired. So that's the sad part. And the somewhat defeating part for me was leaving Jonesboro, going home, back to Nashville, picking up my waiter apron, and going back to work, not knowing if I was going to get a call because the list, civil service, is good for 1 year. So within that 1 year, they can call you and give you an interview and offer you a job. But you don't know if they're going to have the opening. You don't know if someone's going to retire or quit or, God forbid, die or whatever the case may be. So it's really just a waiting game, and you may have to come back and test again. A lot of guys don't get on their first try, not because they didn't do good, but because there wasn't an opening that year. So back home with high hopes and very little expectations that anything was going to happen. But lo and behold, I got a phone call that said, hey, we want you to come in for an interview. And this was about 6 months after I tested. So I waited, and this is why I waited tables for a long time, because I wasn't getting any job offers. So I went in and did the interview, and that was with the head chief of the department, the big dog, the guy, Chief Kevin Miller. And they basically just, it's like any other job interview, ask you the dumb questions that no one wants to get asked, like, why should we not hire you? Like, what kind of question is that? Come on, that's not fair. But they did. They asked me those kinds of questions, and by the end of it, I felt pretty good. But there were 2 other dudes sitting in the waiting room
because they were tired with you, right?
Clothes on, trying to get the job too. So it was another, okay, well, I'm going to go home now and probably not get the job.
So
and sure enough,
were there 2 guys in there because they were tied with you in rank?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So when they start calling people, they may get a person who says, oh man, I've already accepted another job, but I appreciate the offer. Okay. Well, they get marked off the list and they move to the next guy. or they may actually interview someone and just they might have a reason not to hire them, after the interview process. Maybe something came out in the interview that they wouldn't be a good fit or whatever the case may be, and so they don't hire them. But I think the two people that were out there were tied for number 5, because they had gotten that, they needed that many people that year, so they had gotten to that point. I got a phone call from the chief, and I answered it, and he said, "Judd, I just want to let you know we're going with somebody else, and you impressed us, but we feel like the other guy's the right fit for right now. However, if there is another opening this year, I will be calling you." And I said, "Thank you, sir. I really appreciate that. I respect your decision. Let me know if there's any way that I can serve the city. I'd love to be there for you." And we hung up the phone, and I remember driving back to Nashville just defeated, man. Like, what the heck? We made it this far, where at this point it was in January, I think. Made it this far, and maybe a little later, February, and we're going to get to the point where I have to test again. It was coming up in like another, let's see, my timeline's off. It was coming up in like another 6 months. So I guess that was later in the year. It must have been April or so, when they rejected me for the first time. And so I thought I was going to have to test again. I thought I was going to have to wait another year in the dark place, waiting tables, not doing what I wanted to do with my life, and not fulfilling what I thought my calling was. And sure enough, on my birthday, later that month, April 27th, I got another phone call that said, "Hey, we have another opening, and we'd like to offer you the job." And I was like, wow. Okay. I mean, yeah, I'll take it. My wife and I had already talked about it. If we ever got a phone call, we were going to take it. So it was a no-brainer. The catch is there's one more step in the process at Jonesboro. They have you take a polygraph test. And the
That's
reason they have
weird.
you do this, and let me tell you something, it's insane. Polygraph tests are just crazy. I hate them. I never want to do it again. They want people on the department with integrity. And when you go into a house, the person, all their belongings are in there. And you may have one room that's on, it may be a room and contents fire where the bedroom or the kitchen caught on fire. And you got there quick enough and you put it out, and it's one room. The rest of the house is okay. It's a little smoky in there. We'll ventilate it, but it's going to be okay. Like, the house isn't totaled. And you have some houses that you get there and they are freaking rolling. And it's like, okay, well, let's douse this puppy and you get to work. But there's some where you go in and you really try to preserve as much as you can. But just like in your house and just like in mine, we have stuff laying out, right? Like, you may have some cash on the counter, or your wife may have some jewelry laying out, or whatever the case may be. And the last thing that you would want, especially, and now that I'm in the field, is for the fire department to get a black eye, and a bad name for themselves because you had someone on staff who didn't have integrity and went into a home and took something that wasn't theirs. And that's one example of many things that we do in the public where things could go wrong. We work a lot of car accidents. You could take things from there. You could treat people wrong. They just want good people on the fire department because we want a good image with the public. It's one of the only jobs, and we laugh at our chief he says this all the time. We laugh at him, but it's literally one of the only jobs where you will walk up to a stranger's house and they will hand you their baby and say, "Please, I don't know what to do." Like, you think of any other field, when was the last time you walked up to a lawyer and handed Ellery to him and was like, "Here, I don't know, take care of my baby"? You don't do that. But when we show up to your house because you called 911, you expect us to do something. You expect us to do it well, and you expect us to have integrity. And so to keep that image in Jonesboro, it's not this way everywhere, but in Jonesboro, they do a polygraph test, and they ask you a bunch of really hard questions. And I won't go into depth on those questions because technically I don't think I'm allowed to. But essentially, they give you this packet of like 300 questions. And I'm talking like felony level questions all the way down to things like, I'll give you an example. Have you ever stolen from an employer? And that's a really open-ended question, especially for someone with my kind of brain, because I was like, well, no. But like when I worked at Puckett's or Outback, I'd take pens because we used them.
Yeah,
But
or like
technically they weren't
bread or
given to
something.
me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's still technically theft. I mean, like, I still have those pens in my house. I don't work there anymore.
So
They
what
didn't
did
give them
what
to
did you
me.
answer to that question?
Well, and that's the thing. They tell you answer 100% honestly, and then they will give you a chance to explain your answer. So when you sit down and you
Ooh.
get hooked up to all these wires, they ask you your baseline, like, what's your name? Or is your name Judd? Yes or no? Yes. Are you this old? Yes. Do you love your family? Yes. Those kinds of questions. And then they get like a baseline. And then they're because you go through this packet and you just check yes or no to all these questions. So the question they ask you, they don't ask you all 300 questions. They say, did you answer truthfully to everything in the packet? And at that point, if you say yes, and it comes across the polygraph as the truth, then they dive into the packet and they start looking through all the things that you answered that might be red flags. And then they give you a chance to explain that. So when I got to have you stolen from an employer, I was like, yeah, but hold on. It wasn't like I took money from them. Like I was a waiter and and then you get to explain it. So they're like, okay, we're not worried about that. Next thing. And they would move through the list and this police officer just asked you all these questions. And by the end of it, there's people who have actually been arrested at their polygraph because they admitted to felony charges. And they tell you that before you go in. They say you can drop out before the polygraph portion if you want to, if you don't want to answer the questions. So once you get the packet, they give you another opportunity to say, no, I'm not doing that. And because they have had people who've admitted to doing really bad stuff, and it's been like, okay, well, we can't just it's not like you have immunity in here. Like we're gonna arrest you now. So anyway, did the polygraph, was nervous as crap. Thank God I passed it. I don't know how because my heart rate had to be through the roof while I was taking that thing. And once you pass that, you have the job essentially. So yeah, man, it's a heck of a hiring process, but I wouldn't want it any other way because we've ended up with some really good guys. And just like any other organization, you've got some people in there that you're like, how in the world did you get hired here? But as a general rule, like at Jonesboro, we've got some really solid people, guys that love their job and want to do good. And so I wouldn't want that hiring process any other way.
Yeah. So
Ah,
what would you say is your?
long story.
No, man. It's a great story, and it's one that a lot of people are going to benefit from. So what would you say your favorite part about being a firefighter is?
Mm. So trauma is one of my favorite things. Um, I hate it for the person that's going through it, but I know how to fix it, right? Like if you're bleeding, I know what to do to stop that. If you have an airway obstruction, I know what to do to fix that. Like if you have whatever the case may be, I know what to do because I went through EMT school, right? So I get to potentially save your life when I get to intervene, and that's what I guess that's if you ask what my favorite part of the job is, when I get to intervene is my favorite part, and you get to do that a lot, man, in all different ways.
Yeah.
You
So
never know when you show up to work what you're gonna do,
yeah. Um.
and that's cool.
So take me a little bit through like what the academy part was like.
But they give you once your first day of work, you show up, you have a week. Usually is how they time it. You have a week before you actually go to the academy. So that week is time for you to study because you get this like crazy thick EMT book that they tell you they want you to have read before you go, which is impossible unless you're just crazy. And so you dive into that book, you meet all the guys, you go get some physicals done at the hospital, and you get fitted for gear, and you get, I guess I can't use the word hazed, but you get toyed with, we'll call it that since hazing isn't allowed, which is expected because it's a fire department, right? That's what we do is we play pranks and jokes on each other. And so you get that week of just kind of an introductory into life in Jonesboro, but you're not put on a truck. You are just basically administrative hours. You go in from 8 to 5 and you go home. But then when that week is up, you go to Camden, Arkansas. And let me tell you something, dude. Camden, Arkansas is a hole in the ground. It is a small little town in southern Arkansas, and there is nothing there, like absolutely nothing. But the Southern Arkansas Tech University and the Arkansas Fire Academy, Arkansas Fire Training Academy is there. So people from all over the country and even the world go to the Arkansas Fire Training Academy. It's a really good price for all of the classes that you get. And so it's attractive to people to get their certifications and then go back to where they came from. So like I said, my roommate was from Canada. So all kinds of people there. Anyway, show up on my first day. It's about a 4-hour drive from Jonesboro. Show up on my first day. You check in, you get assigned your room in these dormitories. They're really crappy. And they put you through school, man. They put you through, the first thing you do is EMT because it's the hardest intellectually. You have 5 weeks to cover the entire course. Usually that's done in a semester at a college. And we do it in 5 weeks, similar to how the military does it. So it's a lot of information packed in a really short amount of time. And at the end of that 5 weeks, you take a test to pass the course, and then you're sent to take the national exam, which is a pain in the butt, man. That national exam it's graded weird. It's between 70 and 130 questions. I've never taken a test like that. Like, it's not a set number of questions and you get a grade. It's like, you imagine there's this line, and when you answer a question right, you go one step above that line. And then you answer another question right, you go another step above that line. But if you answer the next question wrong, you take a step down. And then you answer another question wrong and you take a step down. Then you're back at that line again, right? So there's like this baseline of pass. And if you answer enough questions right early enough onto the exam, it'll shut you off at 70 and you pass, right? However, if you answer a few questions right and a few questions wrong and a few questions right and a few questions wrong, you ride that line of passing or not. So you can go all the way to 130 questions and fail or pass. So it's a really weird exam. Anyway, all that to say, it's also terribly worded. It's like, which one of these options is most right? So like, technically all of them could be right, but which one is most right? And if you pass that, then you move on to fire stuff, Fire 1, Fire 2. So they put you through EMT school first because some people don't pass. And if you don't pass your test at the end, then you get 2 more shots to pass it. And if you don't pass it in those 2, then you lose your job. So like 3 strikes, you're out kind of deal. Fortunately, thank God, I passed it my first shot and moved on to the fire stuff. So you start doing like burns, like they light stuff on fire and you respond and put it out, and they teach you about all the basics of like combustion and what causes it and like how you stop things from being on fire. So technically speaking, I should be really good at starting fires because I know all the things it takes to put them out. So I know all the things it takes to have them exist. You do burns, you pull hose, you learn how to extricate people from cars, which just means like get them out of the car. We call it extrication. So now you're starting to mesh the EMT course with stuff that you encounter in real life. Like, okay, we've got a person in the car. They've wrecked. This is how they wrecked. This is where they're at. This is how they've ended up. This is what's wrong with them. How do we get them out? How do we like keep them alive while we're working on the car? Because sometimes it takes a long time. So all the components kind of start to come together. And then by the end of the course, you take your exams, you get certified, and then they send you through driver operator, which is where you learn how to drive the giant red siren trucks and learn how to operate the pump panel and get water to the person at the other end of the fire hose. Man, there's just so much that you learn in that 3.5 months time. By the time you get back, like you've got all this textbook information in your head, and then you really get to start learning how things really work. Like, there's a difference between textbook and there's a difference between real life. Like, there's usually a difference between those two things in career fields. It's no different at the fire department. You learn all of this stuff, and then you go to your department, and then you learn how they do all of that stuff. And sometimes they line up, sometimes they're different. But for me, they were different. So I kind of relearned some things, and it was good. But rookie school, as a general rule, man, I mean, we worked out. It's on the same campus as the law enforcement training, ALETA, Arkansas Law Enforcement Training Academy. So we intermingled with those guys a little bit. It was pretty segregated, but we tried to like get to know them some, and we got to use their gym and those facilities. And yeah, we just kind of did life for 3.5 months at these crappy little dorms, and learned new skills, and used air packs for the first time, and donned our gear and went in and searched structures, and you did the whole thing. Whatever you picture a fireman doing on TV, you kind of like we did a lot of those things. And so scaled back, obviously, because we were beginners and learning. But
Okay, so take me through like what it was like in the first few weeks coming back out of the academy.
oh man, lots of not knowing what I was doing and faking it till I made it. And learn as you go, man. Kind of like anything else, learn as you go.
What are some actionable steps that you would give somebody that would want to pursue a career in firefighting?
So, first thing I would say is start applying. Like, just start applying to wherever it is you want to be. Look at what their standards are. Look at, go in and talk to them. We're there for a day. We don't mind visitors. Well, right now we do because we don't want COVID-19. But as a general rule, we don't mind visitors. So go in and talk to them. Ask them what they're hiring, because everyone's a little bit different, right? Every department has their own quirks and qualifications and stuff. What does your hiring process look like? Some of that information is online. But honestly, just going and putting your face there and putting a name to the face is invaluable, because the fire department's a real close-knit group, and you can't force your way into it. It has to be earned. I learned that. I tried to just immediately be one of the guys out of the gate, and it's not like that. When I waited tables, it was like that. Like, I could just kind of, like, you crack a joke, like you meet someone and you make fun of them the first time you meet them, they're like, okay, we're going to get along. You know what I'm saying? Like, because that's the environment when you wait tables, is like everyone just kind of jokes with each other. And so you do that at the fire department out of the gate, and you immediately earn a bad reputation, which is so weird. And so I did that. Actually, I earned a really bad reputation out of the gate because I just tried to be one of the guys, and it doesn't work that way. So by going and like showing that you care enough not to just look at it on a screen, but to be a man and go shake hands, give a firm handshake, look somebody in the eyes, introduce yourself, ask them about their way of life. That speaks volumes, and you learn a lot. So you'll learn what their hiring process looks like, what the qualifications are, and if you're fortunate and the place you want to be does things like Jonesboro does, then you may have a good chance of getting hired there. A lot of places are 21 and up. So if you're a younger person listening to this, you may not be there yet. And so what you can do in the meantime, if you're out of high school but not eligible in age, you can start taking the courses, start investing in yourself, and start taking the courses necessary to become a fireman. That shows initiative, it shows drive, it shows that you want to be there. And then when you get there, you don't have to go retake those classes. Like, if you have your EMT license already and you're NREMT, nationally registered certified, you took that national register exam, like, you don't have to go retake that. So like that, for the fire department, that's attractive because they're like, oh, we don't have to pay to send you to school. You already have it. And they will, right? But they don't have to. So that's a big plus for you. And it looks good. So if you're too young to get hired yet, I would say, go to the station, take the classes. I would say to you, also have a reality check and don't believe what you see on TV, because there's some of that in the job. But like, if you watch Chicago Fire, those guys are running once in a lifetime calls every day. So don't expect that. Like, because I'm an expectations guy, right? Don't get your expectations so high for the fire department where you're going to be running into these buildings every day and rappelling off of, the tallest building in the city all the time and rescuing the damsel in distress or the little baby. It's not that. That does happen in bigger cities. It's more frequent. In smaller places, it's not. Obviously, that's just because of the population and the variety of things that are there. But have a reality check and have realistic expectations going into it. And a lot of that can be kind of weeded through by asking the guys, when you go in and present yourself, asking the guys like what their day-to-day looks like and how many calls they run. Like, just show interest. Man, and outside of that, go wait tables.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you want to say to the listeners out there that would like to do what you do?
Man, yes. So for a long time, I thought I was crazy. I thought that I was the only person in the world who um, felt like they didn't have a place. I thought that I was so scatterbrained. I'd never pick a job or a career. I'd never pick some. I would never find anything that I loved. Um, I thought I was an enigma, and I know now that there are thousands of people out there like me who don't know what they want to do when they graduate high school, and that is totally okay. And who don't know what they want to do when they graduate college. And let me tell you something, that's okay too. And then who don't know what they want to do 3 years into their post college life, that's okay too. Everybody's story is completely different, and whether you, and I'm not even going to say fortunate, whether you were the guy who knew what they wanted to do from the time they were 4 years old because they were playing with a stethoscope and knew they wanted to be a doctor, a toy stethoscope and knew they wanted to be a doctor, or whether you were the person who, they're 30 and they still are like, man, I don't know, I don't like my job, and that's okay because everyone's story is different. The changer for me, the game changer for me, was accepting that and leaning into that, because honestly, that kind of person has strengths that the other kind of person doesn't have. And so once you figure that out about yourself, you can start leaning into all the things that you're really good at. Like, I started to piece together that I do want to help people. I started to piece together that I'm always been physically active. So why wouldn't I do so? I mean, I do that for fun. Why wouldn't I do that in my job? I started to piece all these things together. And before I knew it, of course the aptitude test helped, but I had compiled a list of like 5 jobs that appealed to me, just because I accepted who I am. And so if you're out there and you feel like you're going crazy and you feel like you don't know what to do, take a deep breath, breathe, and just know that you're not alone and it's all going to be okay. And you just got to lean into your strengths, man. Accept who you are and lean into your strengths. So I think that's it, dude. That's all I have to say about that. I don't know. I have kind of a crazy story, and it's not traditional,
Dude, it's
but I am where I am, and I love where I am. And it just took some struggling to get there. But that's kind of when like the best things are formed, right? In the
yeah,
struggling. So
yeah.
it's
So, man,
good.
I really appreciate you sitting down with me, man. It's going to be very valuable to a lot of people. I know
Yeah.
I learned a lot, and it was probably therapeutic for you to say it out loud.
It
Um,
actually was a little bit, man. To be honest, I was kind of nervous when you called. I conducted that podcast for a while, but being
yeah,
on the other end is a little bit of a different story.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I was going to ask you if you'd ever been a podcast guest, but so have you? Is this your first time being a
Dude,
podcast
this is
guest?
my first time. This is my first time to be a guest, and I was honored. Thank you so much for letting me, be on and just share my story. I'm not the best communicator in the world, but
Dude,
hopefully through.
what do you mean? Like, I felt like I was right there with you at the fire academy. I felt like I was with you, like when you pulled up 10 minutes
Good.
late, being the first one to go through the test. So like, it was awesome for me, man. I'm gonna have a lot of fun editing this, and I'm ready for the
I
world
hope
to
you
see
guys
it.
enjoyed
So
the
if you guys are
episode.
interested
Thank you
in
again for
all of
your
the other
support.
things that Judd
Be
has
on the
going
lookout for
on,
more
there's going to be a
content
little
and have a
audio
good day.
extra after this.